Okay, this is day 5 we're going to go with, and what I discovered about this set is there are actually 2 different sets. Now, I bought the master set for the CRX because that's what I have. However, the rear disc brake conversion didn't come from a CRX. I could have gotten one, I wish I would have, but instead I got the Integra, and there is a different bushing for the rear trailing arm, which I covered. They're a little bit bigger, or they're a little bit smaller, I can't recall. But this is the set that comes with the CRX. This is the set that comes with the Integra, and this is the set that I needed to buy because these are Integras. So these are a little bit smaller. They're 31mm as it says, and mine are 35mm. So clearly these are not going to fit. And so my next issue was I wasn't able to press these out, and I couldn't find anything that would make a jig to press these out. So what I did was I went to a local metal place and bought a piece of metal, and it's a pipe 2 inches long, and here are the dimensions for it, and it worked perfectly. So I'll show you how I set this up, and then I'll show you how I did the other one. Alright, so first thing you need to do is you need to be able to drive these centers out right here. You've got a center sleeve, and then you have another little half kind of circle metal ring that goes in between those two. Come on, focus. And then you have the outside bushing right here. I think that's the same one. Yeah, I don't know, that might be actually the middle one. So I used a 14mm deep well to run that through, and if the 14mm got stuck, which it sometimes did, I then used this ball joint tool to drive it. It's the only thing I had to drive it through. But actually, now that I have that piece up there, I might be able to drive it through. It's just 2 inches long. Yeah, I bet I don't even need this anymore. So if you have that pipe, you're not even going to need that. 2 things I've learned, well, maybe 3 things I've learned about using a shop press. 1, you need to have the item completely, either depending on how you're looking at, perpendicular or in line, parallel with whatever you're pressing. Can't be shifted at all. The other thing you're going to need is, with that, is some type of supporting base which keeps it flat. So there's the first thing. The other thing you're going to need is the dimensions. So you're going to need a caliper to measure whatever it is this internal is, and luckily with the energy suspensions it tells you what it is, and then it recommends going 50 thousandths smaller in diameter. For this particular hole, my Craftsman 25mm was extremely close. It was a little bit narrower than 50 thousandths, but it was not too much narrower. I think not a whole lot. I can't remember what it was, but it fits through there and drives it out. And one of the tricks that I learned on this one is that when you drove it out, you could then use the old bushing that drove out of there and then use that to drive in to push out the existing bushing. Now, I tried to do that on these outer ones, and I ended up caving it in. So I don't think, either I didn't have it centered on there right, I don't know if it's the same thickness, or maybe this is thinner and it looks thinner. So I'm not going to ever do that for these again. And when I used the socket, I used this side of the socket because this one kept wanting to move around. And then on the top of the socket, I used this piece from, I think this is the ball joint set. I don't think this is the Honda adapter set. Yeah, there it is right there. It's part number. Yeah, it's the 27164D. So you're going to use that one. I got a mosquito tearing me up again. So once you drive these out with a 14 millimeter, if these metal pieces here, right here, are still in there, I just used a hammer and a screwdriver and ended up pounding them out and getting them to come out. So then you're left with just this bushing here. And then with that bushing, you use this setup, get it centered, and start it. And then the third and last thing I learned is to use some WD-40. So once you start to get it started and it gets in there, then you start to spray lubricant around there, and that'll help stop it from building up pressure and then going so far and then stopping, and building up pressure and then braking and then stopping, because it also hurts my hand. Another thing I learned is you want a scatter shield. I don't have a scatter shield. You want to protect, your vital organs and everything else. So I used my compressor. I hid behind the compressor while I compressed the shop. And I used safety glasses. And I had my face shield still left over from when I was out in the oil fields. So that protects my pretty face. And that's how I did that one. So now I'll set up and show you how I did this one. Now for the middle one, you're going to want to use, out of that ball joint set, you're going to want to use 27023E. And then the socket I used was a Craftsman thin-walled 1 1/16. And that was almost exactly 50 thousandths smaller than the diameter of the bore of that hole. And this one I did have a problem with. I ended up getting one out, and then because I boogered it up before, I had to use the one that I pressed out to then press the one that I couldn't get out, and then I used the socket to press then this one out. But it came out. So I just checked the diameter of that, and it will fit over there, so you wouldn't need that, but it is extremely close. You'd have to have it centered just right on there, otherwise it's not going to work. And I don't know how you'd be able to see it from the top. I would only see it just by looking at it from the bottom. And I also did crack this piece too, so that may not have been my fault though, because when I got it, it had a dent in it right there. You can see it. I don't know if that was, well, it doesn't want to focus on it. Let me find the crack there. God darn this thing. Yeah, you can see it. So, I have to make them aware of that when I return it. And this took me, unfortunately, a few days to figure out. And this was what saved me. This is the vital piece you need right here. And this was the other vital piece. Just to get whatever piece you're on stationary and flat, so that you can press out the object. And then having the right sockets. These are both 25 millimeter on the Integra. I don't know what they would be on the CRX. And then this middle one, the best one for me, was a 1 1/16. And that makes life so much easier. So, and I hope this helps somebody, because I wish I would have been able to find this on YouTube.